Now let's be clear, games by their nature aren't supposed to be strictly realistic, though that doesn't mean that they can't adhere to the basic rules of our own existence, and yet so many games feature mechanics that categorically betray the building blocks of reality, to the point where some mechanics don't really make any sense at all, even in the most basic terms. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game mechanics that make no sense. Number 10, detective vision. One of the most pervasive gaming trends of the last decade or so is detective vision, whereby the player character is able to scan through the surrounding environment for points of interest and even tag enemies and trace their movements through objects. While some games at least try to explain this mechanic away within the context of its world, like Batman being rich enough to create environment scanning tech or having supernatural Witcher senses, even realistic-ish action games will allow you to freely track enemy combatants in a way that isn't even remotely realistic. Granted, games would probably be a lot less fun if you had no idea whatsoever where the enemy was going, but often it feels like developers use detective vision as a crutch to compensate for overly cluttered, busy level design where enemies can't easily be distinguished by the player. Though The Last of Us' listen mode is intended to be a translation of what Joel and Ellie can hear, it still feels somewhat at odds with the game's grittier survival thriller tone. Without it though, the gameplay would simply be off-puttingly difficult for many players. Such is the tension inherent in detective mode. It's useful, but doesn't really make much sense within the internal logic of many games that use it, and yet it's so commonplace and accepted nowadays that it probably isn't going to go away anytime soon, if ever. Number 9, weapon durability. Time for a not so hot take. Weapon durability sometimes absolutely sucks. Now, no game in recent years has had more divisively featured degrading weaponry than The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, where most of Link's weapons and shields will break after a set number of uses. Defenders of the mechanic argue that it incentivized players to change up their playstyle throughout the game rather than simply sticking to the same trusty weapon, but critics retort that it transforms even basic combat into tedious busy work. But on a more general level, weapon durability rarely makes much sense for the simple fact that weapons and shields just don't break that often in reality. Even accepting that games generally operate on an accelerated sense of time, weapons and armor break far more frequently than they ever would in real life, where they're typically designed to stand up to enormous levels of punishment for months or even years. If you had to replace a sword after a mere days or weeks worth in real life, you'd be asking the vendor for a damn refund. Number 8, regenerating health. Traditionally, action-centric video games would litter health packs, potions, and other beneficial pickups around the map to allow players to conveniently restore their health. But over the last few generations, regenerating health has become something that is increasingly popular, whereby all a wounded player needs to do is take cover and avoid injury for like 5 or 10 seconds, where their vitality will start restoring itself. The Call of Duty franchise is perhaps best known for using this mechanic, whereby the player's screen will begin to flash blood red if they're close to death, but if they sit tight for a few beats, their health will return to full. Not all games are quite so generous though, but regenerating health as a whole is a totally cartoonish affectation, given that bloody injuries don't just miraculously repair themselves by taking a breather. It's actually quite the opposite. More often than not, it speaks to the challenges involved with game balancing, that providing just enough health packs throughout a level to assist players is rather tricky. We've all played older games where we've ended up stuck at a checkpoint with low health and no nearby health packs, and it's supremely annoying as you either need to save scum your way through the level or just start it all over again. Conversely though, regenerating health ensures that players always have a healing factor, even if, like detective vision, it does feel like a crutch for designers who can't be bothered to balance their games properly. Number 7, double jumping. The ability to double jump is so widespread throughout platforming and action-adventure games that you probably hadn't even thought about how, air quotes, unrealistic it actually is. The basic physics of our world dictate that jumping is achieved by pushing off from a surface with sufficient force to propel yourself. But what exactly are you leaping from to perform a second jump? Thin air isn't pliable, nor a scalable surface, so gravity dictates that a double jump is scientifically impossible. I know I'm absolutely blowing your mind right now, aren't I, with this? But a few games have at least attempted to offer a plausible explanation, perhaps most memorably Devil May Cry, where Dante's double jump, aka the air hike, creates a temporary platform for him to leap off. It may be unrealistic, but it's one of those mechanics that's so satisfying and feels so intuitively correct within the video game medium that taking it away would definitely piss a lot of people off. Most realistic games at least tend to avoid using the double jump, so it's generally only reserved for more heightened experiences that play fast and loose with the laws of physics anyway. Number 6, locked doors as major obstacles. Seriously, this one is a personal gripe. How many times in how many games have you come across a locked door and your guy's just gone, nah, can't open it. I've got a shotgun in my hand and I could easily blow the lock apart. I've got a sledgehammer in my back pocket as well that could knock it down, but nah, I'm just feeling that this door here needs to be left alone. Not going through this one here. I hate it. I hate it so so very much. Number 5. Healing foods heals horrible wounds. Yeah, no, shoving a hot dog into an open wound, that's not going to help matters, and it's going to make your food taste horrible. Number 4. Reloading your gun magically refills half-empty magazines. In the overwhelming majority of shooters, if you reload your gun midway through a magazine, that half-empty magazine won't remain in your inventory, but instead be magically refilled the moment you hit reload. In reality, of course, a half-empty mag will remain half-empty unless you go through all the effort of redistributing the bullets yourself, which just isn't practical in the middle of a tense firefight. Though there are a few video games which actively track the bullet count in each individual magazine, such as some of the Rainbow Six games, the overwhelming majority of shooters opt instead for magic reloading, where any half-empty mag will suddenly just be fully refilled the moment you hit the reload button. Ultimately, developers understandably assume that players won't want to deal with the busy work of juggling a bunch of half-full magazines during a firefight, as it would make shooting a lot less fun. It works for shooters focused on intense, meticulous realism, but otherwise it would just be a boring impediment. It may not make much sense, but in the interest of your fun, it totally is worth it. Number 3. Rubber banding. Rubber banding is a technique used by game developers to ensure that you're never doing too well against the enemy opponents. If you demonstrate that you're really good at a game, the AI will react by suddenly playing insanely well. It's most typically deployed in racing games, perhaps most famously Mario Kart, where no matter how skilled a human player might be and how much of a lead they should be able to create, the AI rivals will eventually drive supernaturally fast in order to try and close the gap. Now, in theory, it's designed to maintain a tense experience for the player, rather than allowing them to tediously rinse the competition without even the vaguest fear of losing. Conversely, rubber banding can also be used to extend a hand to a struggling player by ensuring a winning AI opponent doesn't surge totally out of reach. This, of course, betrays the real-life nature of competition and physics. Reality doesn't have a rubber band, and if you let them, people will leave you in the dust with reckless abandon. It's more of a trick of the developer's part to dupe into having a more competitive, reactive experience, even if so many gamers are totally savvy to it these days and regularly call it out. Number 2. Crouching makes you move more quietly. One of the more common gameplay elements of stealth action games is a crouching mechanic which will make you move more quietly while approaching enemies. While it makes sense that crouching makes you less visible and more compact to enemies, the sound argument doesn't really hold much water. For starters, why would you really be any quieter just by crouching down and putting the same weight on your feet? I mean, just test it out for yourself. There's pretty much no difference. Secondly, just crouch walking for miles on end would absolutely wreck your knees. It isn't a combat strategy viable for long-term use. In reality, it makes more sense to just walk at the same slow speed as the crouch. You make the same amount of noise, but without subjecting yourself to enormous bodily strain. If Solid Snake, Sam Fisher, Aloy, and the various Assassin's Creed protagonists were real people, they'd need their doctor on speed dial. And number 1, monsters that carry loot. Now, there are 3 things in life: death, taxes, and loot in video games. Now, loot isn't exactly something new. Video games have rewarded players with useful pickups for defeating enemies in RPGs for decades now. But there's definitely been a trend towards engineering games around the loot grind in recent years. Whether you enjoy hoovering up loot or not, does it really make any sense to kill a gelatinous monster and for it to drop items that only a humanoid could conceivably use? More to the point, where would the unclothed monster even keep that stuff? Actually, I don't want to know. Ultimately, it's just another part of the game's attempt to carrot and stick players, giving them a material reward for killing an enemy, and so in turn making that action feel more meaningful. There's no more reason for a creature to drop a shield or some currency upon their death than there is a spider that you kill in a bathroom to cough up some coins. Now, it's silly, but we all love the dopamine hit that comes with scooping up that sweet, and sometimes very glowing loot. So yeah, it won't be going away anytime soon. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 video game mechanics that make no sense. Hope you enjoyed this rather tongue-in-cheek, nitpicky list, so obviously just take it with a pinch of salt. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ0, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice, where I do all of my streaming outside of work, and it'd be great to see you over there, my friends. But before I go, my friends, I want to say something that to me makes sense, and that is to big you up, my friend, to make sure that you're going out there and living your best life, because you are a massive ledge. You deserve love, happiness, and success, and I want you to go out there and smash your life goals today. Big love to you, my friend. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.